Have I pressed it? No. Okay, wonderful. Hello everybody, I'm Renee. So I'll be starting off. We'll have some questions as we go. Me and Susan will both answer your questions. It's just a bit of an overview on managing staff. We all have to do it, whether you're the P&C or the convener. You might have to manage the volunteers or other employees if you've got them under you. So what we'll be looking at today is your aims, recruitment and selection. Sorry, I've lost my one with notes. Yep, recruitment and selection. Induction, probationary period, positions, policies and procedures, performance reviews, and managing poor performance. So it's a bit of an order of how you can proceed through the employment life cycle. And we'll be looking at each area, have some discussions. The main aim will be to avoid problems. We don't want to get to the point where it's not working out with the employee. We want to stop it getting there. However, we'll also have some tips on what to do when you get to that point and it's just not working out. Okay, so what's in it for you today? So you'll get some more knowledge in staff management. Maybe you've come onto the P&C and no experience managing anyone ever. You get an increased confidence. It's really intimidating dealing with some employees, and so hopefully we can boost your confidence a bit. You'll have some tips on what to do when those situations come up. So therefore you'll have an increased ability to act, and hopefully maybe you'll get some acknowledgement that your current practices are appropriate, or we can identify some areas for improvement. Okay, so our first topic is the P&C objectives and functions. Now, the P&C Model Constitution states that the objective of the association is to promote the interests of and facilitate the development and further improvement of the school. So that's quite broad. But each P&C tends to have different aims that they want to achieve in their term, which might be, be smart choices compliant, or increase the earnings of the tuck shop. Some aren't breaking even. We want to break even. That could be your aim. Or you might have a particular project in mind, something that you want to fund for the school, and you want to raise enough money to get that item in. And then, how are your employees aware of this aim? So that's the next thing. We want to make these employees aware. We might have an aim. Look, we want to be smart choices compliant. But if your convener doesn't know that, then you're not going to get very far. We all need to understand the aim. And how can we communicate this to your employees? Well, you can do it through induction. That's one way. So you want to recruit and find somebody who's sharing your aims, then you induct them into those aims, so it's all very clear and understood. Another idea is that you can post stuff up around the tuck shop. We had one school who was their aim was basically fresh and healthy. They wanted everything fresh and healthy, and they put a lot of effort into it. They put it on their letterhead. They put it up in the tuck shop. It was communicated to everyone. And therefore, they've been doing very well, and they're certainly achieving those goals. Now, why do we have an aim? Well, basically, it helps you identify where you are and where you want to be, and therefore what you have to do to get there. It assists everyone to have the same goals as well. Like I discussed, if we all have the same goals, then we're more likely to achieve something. If I want to be more healthy, that the person over there wants to make more money and doesn't really care what we're feeding the kids, then we're going to have a clash. Everything's going to work a lot smoother if we're working together to achieve the same thing. Okay, so this leads into the first step, which is recruitment and selection. So it's generally the first thing we do when we're looking at a new position. Maybe if you've just started or you've got the new employee. So, the first thing is that P&Cs are not required to complete a merit-based selection. However, this is the best practice. So this, time and time again, has delivered the best results. It's not to say it's going to be the thing for your P&C. There's a few factors to consider, but it certainly is very handy. So we thought we might just get a bit of a raise of hands. So who's been through the recruitment and selection process? Who's had to do one of those? Okay, we've got a couple of you. We've probably all been on the other end, where we've been getting hired. Now, how many people have done a merit selection? Oh, yes. Okay, a couple. Good. So, bit of an overview on what is merit selection. It's basically trying to find the person with the best capabilities for the position. This is where you're normally doing an advertisement outside, and where outside of the school, maybe inside, you can do both in merit selection. Then we're getting applicants, and we're judging those applicants on their knowledge, skills and abilities. How do they fit the role? That also comes into identifying what knowledge, skills and abilities we want the employee to have. So there are a number of benefits to having an effective recruitment and selection. I'll go through some of these. So we'd have a more efficient workplace, lower absenteeism, lower turnover of staff, higher staff morale, little or no performance management, hopefully, and avoiding the angst of having to dismiss an employee, because of course, again, that's what we want to avoid. Okay. Yeah, so as I said before, to have an effective recruitment and selection process, you need to identify the right person for the position. So this is identifying the traits that you want them to have. Do you want them to be, really good customer service, or do you want them to be a really good cook? What are you looking for in that applicant? And that'll help you tailor your advertisements, your questioning, all that sort of stuff. And it develops your selection criteria, so you can have a clear selection criteria and therefore and solve that problem. All right, and then does your aim match the candidate's aim? So do they have a passion, as Jocelyn was talking about it? Do you want this to be, a really good tuck-shop experience for everybody? Is that the person you're looking for? Or do you just want to get someone to get the job done? Because that will depend on who you hire. If you want someone who's really out there, go-getter, they've got to have that passion and that drive, and that's something you'll be looking for. And then finally, reference checking. So it doesn't happen a lot. So how many people do we have out here who reference check? Yay, quite a few. That's good. So when we don't reference check, it can lead to disaster. People have lied and will probably continue lying on their resumes. Sometimes it's a little white lie. They're just making themselves look a bit better. Sometimes it's big. There was a case where a high-level manager at a big organisation got hired without a reference check. To correct, they reference checked with his wife. He got hired. He had been fired from his previous organisation for fraud, and then committed fraud at the new organisation. So with a proper reference check, the hope would be that you would identify why he previously ceased employment, and thus you probably wouldn't have hired him, particularly in the high level position that he was in.
Can I just pop in there?
Go, Susan.
CMS just recently did a reference checking. Catherine did it on behalf of one of our members, and it was somebody applying for a position in a childcare centre who said that they had been a 2IC, so an assistant coordinator, and the person they'd nominated had been a coordinator in a centre. And in fact, Catherine happened to know the organisation, so rang the CEO of the organisation to find out that the person who was supposedly had been a coordinator or director had never been a coordinator or a director, and the person who said they'd been a 2IC had never been a 2IC. So they had outright lied on their application. So it just highlights the need for you to pick up the phone and double check on do your reference checking, because people do lie. They don't always tell the truth when they're applying for a position.
That is right. Right, so we had a few who said they'd done the merit selection before. Maybe if you could just say how you felt it went. I'm seeing someone nodding back there. Are you happy with how it went? Yeah. And is that person still employed? Are you still continuing? Oh, there you go. So we're just starting, so that's good. Did you get many applicants? Yeah, a few. Yeah, so, a bit of a choice there. Do we have some others here who maybe have just appointed someone? Because I guess this is the other option. You can just select someone to go into the position. It could be say, tuck shop assistant or the OSH assistant coordinator, step up into the coordinator or step up into the convener. Do we have any who have done that? Yes, we've got a yes over there. And how did that go for you?
I'm thinking the same thing, where we had interviews for a convener role.
Yeah.
And just sent out the application on the website and then asked people in for interviews.
Okay, yeah. So you've done a similar thing. Yep, recruited through that way. I'm thinking if anyone's done, a direct appointment, like we already know we want that
Just
person
tap somebody on the shoulder.
and you're in.
Somebody who may be either a volunteer or already another paid employee in another position. Or the other option is sometimes they're a member of the P&C executive who says, I'll step down and become...
I see Teresa, because Teresa has recently been appointed.
Either nominates or is appointed into a position. So they don't go through a merit selection. They're appointed because as an employer, you're already aware of their skills, knowledge and experience.
Yes.
We have, probably not so much myself, but my coordinator, we both did, we have an assistant coordinator. She was an educator, so we already knew that she had, we knew that she was going to be the right person because she had been there for a while. And trying to find, especially in outside school hours care, it's very hard to find people who want to do limited hours but are qualified.
Yeah,
so
it is an expense, and this is why people will often appoint. They've got the right person there, and I think the idea here is the person that they've appointed already has the skills required to step into that position. Sometimes, maybe it's forced. They want to get into that position. It's not. You don't look into their skills at all, and that's when they can become a problem. But if you know they've got those skills, and particularly if they've had a lot of experience in the P&C, it can help. And that's when you might decide, oh, look, we'll just appoint this person. We know they're going to fit fine.
And we're now at the point she's actually moving on, and we don't have anyone currently who we think is suitable, so we've had to apply, but we still are having trouble finding.
Yeah.
So in your situation when you appoint from your current staff, you can't give them another probationary period because they've already reserved it. But what you can do is we'll give you a 3-month trial in the position, and if you don't work yet, you'll go back to your previous position. So you don't backfill their previous position until they finish, say, a 3-month trial period. That way you don't sort of backfill, and then when she doesn't work out or they don't work out, you don't have...
We haven't got anyone who we think is suitable to be from our current pool of staff, so we advertised, but we're still having trouble finding applicable applicants who have advertised, because a lot of the time we'll put a criteria in, they'll advertise, and they'll say they've got it, and you actually see the resume. They haven't, so...
Yeah, and we have temporary tenure contracts as well if you want to trial anyone in the position. And the templates that make it quite clear that this is a temporary appointment and that you're not guaranteed employment after the completion of the period, just to make sure that they understand what's going on. All right, we'll jump on to induction. So we've recruited, we've selected, we've found the right person. Now we need to induct them. So why should we complete an induction? Well, in any shape or form, they will in some way be inducted. So if you have a induction process, then you're going to have more control over how they're inducted, what they know and when they know it. Give them the right information. Otherwise, they'll just be, mulling around until they eventually figure it out themselves. And sometimes, that can get a bit confusing. So good inductions can result in the employee adapting more quickly. So they're going to jump into the role a lot quicker. They're going to know what's going on and be able to do it. Otherwise, as Jocelyn was saying in her experience, she's not really knowing what she's doing. She's just jumped into this position as convener, and now she has to manage employees and figure it all out. If we can help them, they're going to be at their best quicker. So what should you cover in your induction? It's going to depend a bit on your organisation. We need the health and safety staff, the policies and procedures, provide the information about the workplace, where everything is, what happens in an emergency, where do I go, and then And the other tip is to have them acknowledge everything in writing. So, if you have a manual for the employee to read, they read through and sign that. They read through the policies and procedures and they sign that. They understand what's going on. You can have an induction checklist, which Jocelyn mentioned that she's got one in her guide, I think. And we've also got some that you can access. And that's a really good way to just make sure you meet everything. Have they met everybody? The social aspect of an induction is important as well, because you want to get along with the people that you're working with. It might take a bit to introduce them to every volunteer. That can build up over a time, but definitely the main people. The P&C, who are they going to go to if they have a problem? If they're not the convener, who are they going to go to if they have a problem with the convener? Not saying that's going to happen. And then, so what is a good induction? Oh wait, so I've got another bit there on what you're covering in induction can depend on who the person is. We've got a couple of categories here, like school leavers or graduates, or someone from a non-English speaking background, somebody with a disability, an ex-manager, or an existing employee who's just stepping up into a different role. All need induction, all probably a little bit different. The more skills they have, the less probably work you have to do on that. If they've done, if they've made everything a million times before they've already been employed, then you're not going to have to go through that all again. But they might need to know how to do the ordering. Maybe that's a new skill that they need to pick up. So you need to make sure that they understand what that is, they understand their new responsibilities. Or somebody who's got no experience is going to need a lot more assistance, more time to get to that stage where they're working effectively. So what is a good induction? Well, a good induction, again, will look different, a little bit different for everybody. You need to ensure that the main areas are identified. So it doesn't take one day to induct somebody. It's going to take a lot of time, particularly that social aspect that you might consider in your induction. You need to follow up during the induction period, and we'll talk about that a little bit in probation as well, is following up with the employee, making sure that everything's going well. What are their problems? Maybe you find out that the computer doesn't work and that's why they're not responding to any of your emails. There's all stuff that you need to find out in the induction process. Encourage the employee to ask questions and give you feedback. That's really important. If it's just you telling them everything, they're not going to be they're not going to receive the benefits, because they might listen, but what's their input? That's what you want to find out. Often as well, when you come into a new workplace, you identify maybe you did something different at another workplace and you think it might work better. You have a lot of ideas. You come in and you're like, oh, okay, we could do this, we could do that. They need a forum to discuss that as well, and that's good to have meetings with them, get them to provide that feedback. They could have some brilliant ideas, and if they don't implement it at the beginning, it might fade off and then they just get stuck into the way that things are already going, even though they might have had a better idea. And finally, important bit is that paperwork needs to be completed. So we need to do employment contracts, we need to do a confidentiality deed, and position descriptions, and of course all those policies that we discussed, and then signing off of the induction checklist. All right, now I will pass on to Susan to lead you through some more topics.
So the probationary period, a really important thing that you have for your permanent employees. So under state legislation, you have a 3-month probationary period which is mandated under legislation. However, you can extend this probationary period, say, out to 6 months if you find that somebody doesn't quite have the skills, knowledge and experience. So they may have worked in a commercial kitchen, they may be a chef, they've got all those things that you need for your canteen, for example, but they've never worked in a school. They've never worked with a P&C. They don't know how a P&C works as an employer, or they've never worked for a community organisation. So therefore, you need to perhaps extend the probationary period to allow them to have 3 months just to get to know how things work in the new environment, which is a little different, say, to a commercial kitchen. And you might say, but I'll never get a commercial chef or anybody in my tuck shop. And I'm going to say to you that some of you may even already have one in your canteen. Have any of you got a chef? Yes, so there you go, a few. Because what is happening, commercial kitchens are very busy, they work strange hours, it's a lot of hard slog, and so if people are coming into retirement or family responsibilities or caring, working in a school canteen suits their ability to keep their skills, knowledge and experience up to date. They also bring with them a lot of skills, knowledge and experience to do with hygiene and food preparation and managing staff and costings, but they don't know how to work with a volunteer board of management as an employer. So but you need to do that right at the start of engagement. Let them know that their probation is not going to be 3 months, it's going to be 6 months. And the other thing you need to consider with P&Cs, you need to tell them that probationary period is going to be term time. For example, if you're recruiting right now and you're giving them 3 months probation or 6 months probation, wham, you've got 6 weeks when you're not operating, coming right up in the middle of it. And that's 6 weeks of your probationary period that you possibly could lose. So you need to stipulate in your contracts that the probationary period is 3 or 6 months term time. So you get 13 weeks to assess their skills, knowledge, experience, whether they're a good fit for you as an organisation. Now, how do you do that? Well, at the end of the first, you do the induction as Renee said. So I'm hoping all of you do inductions for your staff, so you all do inductions. So at the end of the first month, do you have a talk to them? How many of you talk to your new employees at the end of the first month? 1, 2, 3, right? Talk to them. Tell them how you think that they're going in the job and where you'd like to see some improvement. It's also an opportunity for them to tell you what's not working for them, okay? Might find that they might tell you they feel like they're being micromanaged, that somebody's always telling them what to do instead of allowing them to demonstrate their skills, knowledge and experience to you as an employer, and not allowing them to put their own stamp on the position. So there you have that discussion and talk about what each of you, set a plan of what you expect, and then you meet again at the end of the second month. Or if they've got a 6-month probation, you might wait till the end of the third month and then have another discussion. But ultimately you should have at least 3 meetings prior to the end of the probationary period. And that meeting has got to be before the end, the last meeting's got to be before the end of the anniversary date of their employment, because once you go past that anniversary date, they've already established tenure in the position and you're limited to what you can do. You've got to performance manage them out. So you need to have that meeting in that probationary period to finalise and make that decision as an employer whether you think they are the best person for the job or whether you're better to get rid of them and start with the next person on the list or go out for a new recruitment. Because if they're really not hitting the marks and you're constantly in arguments with you, they're constantly not reporting, they're constantly disobeying instructions from their employer, then why would you persist past the probationary period? If you've spoken to them, telling them your expectations, you've met their requirements of you, and there's still no improvement, you seriously need to consider whether you go past that probationary period or you start over again. Because once they establish tenure in the position, then obviously performance managing them out of that role is more time consuming, more expensive, and a lot of emotional investment and time and energy in going through that process than it is to manage them out during their probationary period, where you can virtually just say, look, you're not a fit for our organisation and we're not going to continue with your employment beyond the probationary period. Now, if you've got a casual, that period is 12 months. Casuals don't establish tenure in their position until they become a long-term casual at the completion of 12 months employment. So the process is a little bit longer for casuals. Not for casuals, you wouldn't. They don't, just under law, they don't establish tenure in the position for 12 months. Well, if a casual goes beyond the 12 months, they've established tenure in the position and they have the same rights as a permanent employee when it comes to termination or disciplinary matters. Okay?
Sorry, just add for a second as well. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do the review every month still for 12 months for the casual. Depending on how much they work, you might do it every couple of months.
If they've gone past 12 months, we're talking a casual, you don't get past 12 months. If they're not suiting your role, well before 12 months is up, they should be out of there. You should have removed them from the roster well before the 12 months. Even a casual, by the end of about the 6th month, You should have known whether they're reliable and they turn up, they're good at supervisors, that they're good at doing their paperwork, their programming, all of those things. If they're not demonstrating it, then don't persist with them. Just tell them you're going to remove them from the roster and they won't be getting any more shifts. Okay? So don't go beyond 12 months because then you've got to performance manage them out. All right? So position descriptions and policies and procedures. Every employee should have a position description. So all of you give your employees a position description. How many of you update it? When they've, just a couple. So I've got conveners who've been in the job 18, 20 years, who've got the same job description they had 20 years ago, but the role of a tax shop convener has certainly changed in 20 years. Well, we've had the introduction of smart choices. You know, some of the accounting manual's been introduced since that time, so there's requirements for cash handling and reporting and what have you. So as an employer, you should review the position description on a regular basis and you should update it. Okay, just incorporate the changes. It is a living document. It doesn't change. It doesn't have to not change. It has to reflect the skills, knowledge and experience that you require for the role. Okay, and over time you may have expended a lot of time and energy training your employees to get additional skills. Excuse me, there's some here today doing some training, and that's an advancement on their training, their skills and knowledge that you've just given them, and some expectations you can expect in their role going forward. So that should be reflected in their position description. Also, you should have some policies and procedures. So I assume some of you have you got policies and procedures in your tuck shop? In your outside school, I know outside school as care should have them for their ratings and assessment, but do you have a sort of a handbook that has your policies and procedures? Does the P&C approve them? Because every policy and procedure for your P&C should be approved at a P&C meeting, okay? But you should include your employees in their development, feedback. I mean, they're the ones that you trust to run your businesses, so if a policy's not working, you should ask them, does this work and why doesn't it work? Okay, you know, we used to have a smoking policy where they had to be off the school grounds and was it 4 metres from the school entrance. Now they've got to be the other side of the road. Okay, they can't be on the same grounds, right? So for your smokers, just for example, for the smokers in your employment, how far is your tuck shop from the school fence? How long does it take them to get there, walk across the road, have their smoke, walk back? Can they do that in 10 minutes? And how many smoke breaks a day are you allowing them to take? The point of the matter is, the only time they should be allowed to have a cigarette break is during their tea break, their 10-minute tea break. They may only get one of those a day if they're working less than 7.6 hours. And their unpaid meal break. That's right, so you can't discriminate, but you can say to them, this is the only time. You have a smoke before you come to work, you have them in your breaks and you're going to have to leave the grounds and go across the road to have them. And if you can't deal with that, can we help you with a quit program? You know? Or do you need to go and speak to your doctor to manage your addiction during work hours? Might require that they need to wear a patch during working hours so that they're not racing enough to have a smoke. But it's not unreasonable for you to expect your employees to work the hours for which they're being paid. But you need to be aware that they do have an addiction and you need to work with them to manage that addiction. Okay, so don't get, your policy should reflect the need to work with them, but it should have clear direction of your expectations as an employer. So that's just an example of what a policy, but also have empathy for your staff, but also have an understanding you've got a business to run. And when you have policies and procedures, all staff should be inducted in them. So whether you do that at a staff meeting on a regular basis, so if you've got 70 policies, for example, divide that up into 10 meetings or 12 staff meetings a year, and deal with those each staff meeting rather than have 70 at once because we've got ratings and assessment in 2 months, say for a NOSH, and I've seen that happen. Suddenly we're reviewing all the policies because they're getting the ratings and assessment. Do it on a cyclical basis during the year, a few policies each month, and then it doesn't become so burdensome. And then some policies don't need updating. There'll only be a few that actually need amending because the legislation's changed or the requirements under the national legislation may have changed. All right? And then obviously the best thing is once you've done an induction with your staff, have them sign an acknowledgement form that says, I've had the opportunity to read, ask questions and that I understand. Give them a copy of that acknowledgement form, keep the other one in your file, because then you've got a record. They can't come to you when you're trying to manage their performance and say, I didn't understand. Well, I've got an acknowledgement form that says, well, you said that you had the opportunity to read, ask questions and that you did understand. Now, a few years ago, I dealt with a childcare director who claimed that she didn't understand that what she was doing was wrong, but we were able to produce 3 acknowledgement forms that she, over about a 10-year period, where she acknowledged that she'd read, understood. Okay? So that argument didn't hold water for her. So performance reviews. How many of you actually conduct performance reviews? And how often do you conduct them? Yearly, 6 monthly, 2 yearly? 6 monthly? For the OSH, every 6 months? Okay. Okay. And what do you think the benefit of a performance review is? Or if you've got problems with their performance, you can raise it. So a normal performance review is that you send out a form with some standard questions on and they self-rate themselves on it. Say for a 1 to 5 as an example, and then you sit down with them. You give that to them for a week or so to take away and write some comments on it about what they need to talk about and what they think they might need as an employee. And then you sit down with them and you might say, well, look, you've rated yourself a 5 here, but I think you're only a 3.5. But on this one, you've only rated yourself a 3, but I think you're actually a 4.5. And you go through and discuss it and talk through it. And at the end, if you find there's some areas that need improvement, you develop a performance improvement plan and maybe set some goals for the next 3 to 6 months. So training or mentoring. Yes. Hmm. Yeah, you've got to see whether, and one of the things you might say is, look, I think you're selling yourself short here. You've only given yourself a 3.5, but really on this particular thing, you are actually a 5. You're top of the tree. You're doing an excellent job. Oh yes, and in fact, there's usually you would actually have the employer mark on there where they think you are. So the record shows where they mark themselves and where the employer marked them, and maybe some comments from the employer that might say, I believe they sold themselves short and they're actually at this level. Yeah, and it's really good to have that documentation to support that employee when new committees come in, because sometimes people think they want to move somebody on because the relationship's not working with that new committee. And as I said to you in my previous presentation, you don't have to like the people you employ, you don't even have to like the people you work with, you just have to work with them. Yeah, that's right, for the betterment of the business and the children and the service. Unless that employee is being rude, is not following instructions, is acting inappropriately or mistreating, or bullying their other staff, you can usually work through any issues that you have. People have bad days, they have off days, they even have things that impact on their performance that comes from their personal life. They have a death in the family, they have a sick spouse or a sick parent or child, and they're not firing on all cylinders. You can't expect them to be at the top all the time. And as an employer, you need to know that, and your staff should feel comfortable to come to you and say, look, I'm doing my best, I'm coming to work, but I do have these things going on at home. I don't want it to be common knowledge, but as my employer, I think I need to let you know because I may need some further assistance or some time off in the future. Okay? So don't expect that your employees are always going to be up here all of the time, because there will be occasions when, you know yourself, you're just not firing on all cylinders, and therefore they may need some additional support in the workplace. So whether you give them some additional hours of supporting staff, or some time off work to allow them to recover from work. But that should be a negotiation with the employer. Have I forgotten anything
No,
there?
that's good. You can click the next slide, because we have a little bit of lighthearted entertainment for you. We're going to do a slight role play. Okay, I am an employee, and this is my employer, manager, whatever you would like her to be.
Renee,
Yeah.
I've noticed you haven't put your report into the P&C for the last 2 months.
Yeah, been busy.
But you know it's a part of your job description. Is there any particular reason why you haven't been able to put it
No,
in?
don't want to do it. Not doing it.
But it's part of your job description.
No, I'm not doing it.
So can I just confirm that it's not that you've had any problems, you just don't want to do it?
Yeah.
So can I just further confirm that you're telling me, and now I've got this understanding, you're telling me that you're deciding to disobey a lawful instruction?
Well, it's not like I'm doing that. I'm just saying I was busy,
But it is part of your job description, is it not?
I don't know. Haven't seen my job description.
So a good employer having this discussion would probably have their job description with them. And I'd say, Renee, just see here in clause 4.3, it says report in writing monthly to the P&C.
Yeah, okay. When do you want me to do? When do I have to do it?
Well, first of all, you should tell me what the obstacles are.
Oh, I've just I've been really busy. A lot more kids are buying food and ordering and stuff.
So have you been utilising your volunteers?
Yeah. Maybe I could get them in a bit more. Yeah.
Do you need some more help with volunteers to give you some time to get your report done?
Yeah, I mean, more volunteers is always good. That would be helpful.
Would it help if the P&C gave you a template for the report? Would that save you some time?
Yeah, that would make it much quicker.
All right, then. I think the P&C will offer you a template, and so I can assume if we supply that, we'll get the report next meeting?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So what I'm saying to you, that would have been a personal conversation, not in front of other people. It would be, yes, trying to ascertain what are the reasons, but also stamping your authority that it is an expectation and that by failing to do it, she's not obeying her job description and she's potentially disobeying a lawful instruction to do it. But you don't want to scream and shout, it just needs to find a way around it. So find in a template. Perhaps a couple of hours, maybe they are busy. Look into the reasons and can you give them some assistance? So that's just a little bit of role play, and I hope that we've been of assistance to you this afternoon.